Coronation Street fans are set for an epic week as Pat Phelan's return plays out in epic fashion, with all episodes airing after the watershed to show even more shocking scenes. Last fans saw of Pat was when Gary Windass traveled to Abergele after becoming suspicious of one of Nicola Rubinstein's online friends, and discovered Pat was living in a caravan park. At the moment, little is known about Pat's plot, and it was revealed in tonight's episode that the person stalking and plaguing Pat's estranged wife, Eileen Grimshaw, is actually Faye Windass rather than Pat himself. Image, ITV. So as a result, how will Pat return to the cobbles? Here's a rundown of the week of his nightmare return. Gary returns with a surprise on Monday's episode. Gary and his army mate, Joe, storm Phelan's caravan after discovering he is alive. A fight breaks out between the group, and Joe and Gary manage to knock Phelan unconscious. They kidnap him and return him to Weatherfield, locking the murderous villain in the storeroom. Sarah Platt discovers him locked up, bound and gagged in the room, but will she tell everyone? Phelan tries to escape on Tuesday. Sarah confronts Gary about who she's found, reminding him that he could end up in prison for kidnapping Phelan in such a horrendous way, especially for assaulting him and transporting him in his van. Meanwhile, in the storeroom, Phelan wakes up just as young Jack Webster wanders in and finds Phelan after letting himself into the builder's yard. Phelan quickly hatches a cunning plan and suggests Jack looks for a pair of scissors to try to help get him out, but will the young boy help the villain? Phelan's plan comes together. Phelan offers Jack a tenner to cut him free on Wednesday's episode, at which point Gary and Sarah return to the storeroom to find Jack attempting to cut Pat free from his bonds. Sarah gives Jack the tenner, telling him to leave the builder's yard and making him promise not to tell a soul what he had seen. Pat then decides to get very personal with Gary, goading him with nasty jibes about his mum, Anna Windass, who is currently in prison serving a long sentence thanks to the villain's terrible plot to frame her. Snaps and viciously beats and kicks him, as Sarah watches on in horror, but it's not over for Pat. Suddenly Phelan throws a chair at Gary, having been freed enough to rip away from his bonds, and barges his way into the yard where he pulls out a gun. Eileen faces her fears. A raging Phelan begins Thursday's episode by tying up Gary and Sarah, before taking a menacing walk down the cobbles towards number 11 to confront his wife and daughter. With his gun in his hand, he forces his way into the house to confront Eileen and Nicola, then sees his grandson for the first time. Eileen and Nicola are incredibly fearful, and try to defend themselves, before a dramatic confrontation ensues. A gunshot rings out at the house, but who has been shot? The final showdown. Image, ITV. After the shot has been fired, Phelan moves to the bistro with his gun, also carrying his first casualty. Time, of course, Michelle and Robert's wedding is supposed to be taking place, though Robert threatened to do a runner in Thursday's episode. Phelan demands Allie Neeson administers first aid to his victim, before the murderer grabs a hostage and locks himself in the restaurant's kitchen. Image, ITV. The police arrive and surround the restaurant, but will anyone make it out alive? Though few details about who will be hurt by the villain have been released, it's fair to say blood will be spilled on the cobbles next week, with shocking scenes airing after the watershed to protect those fearing the revenge plan. Coronation Street airs every day next week from 9 p.m. on ITV.